recording another class today in a different environment, so I apologize for the cats and maybe a little messiness behind me, but hopefully things are still clear. We're gonna work mostly on spinal and upper spine mobility in particular today, and identifying the two sides as a way to come into the midline. So as always, feel free to modify anything that you need to modify, and I hope we have fun. We're gonna start as I often do, laying down. So find your way onto your back in any kind of comfortable position for now. Doesn't have to be anything specific, and if you'd like to take a little wiggle, take a moment to move around, take a moment to see what your body feels like. Maybe it's the first time that you officially pay attention to your body today. See what kind of energy level you have, what kind of movement you feel like doing or you desire. All of these things might change as we go. And just give yourself a moment to see what's going on right now. And then as you're ready, we're gonna find our way into a sort of Shavasana-like position. We're gonna start slow. We're gonna pick it up, and then we're gonna end slow, if you stick all the way to the end. So if you're starting with me, we're gonna move the right foot towards the right edge of the mat and take Bananasana, crossing the left ankle over the right ankle, moving the shoulders over towards the right, maybe the hips a little towards the left if you wanna stay centered on your mat. And then I like to grab the left wrist with the right hand overhead, but if your shoulders or neck are not that happy today, you can totally open your elbows in a sort of cactus shape. And what we're trying to do in our Bananasana here is to kind of really find the sides of the body. So oftentimes we'll want to roll onto the side. The spine kind of does have to twist a little bit in order to get into deep side bends. But we're going to try to the best of our ability to minimize that, and so that we can find the sensation of the right side and left side. And in this case, my right side is softly shortening, and my left side is softly lengthening. It's probably not a big stretch sensation. If it is, you can make it a little bit more gentle if you feel like it, or you can keep it if it's interesting. And I might notice also how my breath runs into the body. Maybe I find that extra space into the left side to allow for movement, to allow for breath to happen. Maybe I notice if my head wants to turn towards the right, and see if I can also find my face kind of straight up towards the ceiling. We're going to come into this sidedness idea later on through class. So see if you can kind of make a mental note of the sensation for yourself right now. I'm just going to take a couple of more breaths here, starting perhaps to visualize the spine, and even more so the positioning space of the spine. So it's making a curve, a C-shaped curve on the floor. If you can, if you want, you can visualize it from above, kind of like making a mark of the position of the spine on the ground or in space. Because the next thing that's going to happen is that the spine is kind of going to stay in a space hold, and I'm going to roll my body around it to come into a fetal position on my right side. That all sounds like a lot of complicated stuff. It's actually not. So whenever you're ready, I like to think of this soft tissue rolling around the spine, but my head and tail are kind of going to stay in the same position, and I'm going to roll over onto the right side, making a little fetal position. I can bring my elbows and the knees in if I want, and see if the spine can stay curved. Sometimes you might want to flatten out in this shape. And then I'm going to reopen back into my Bananasana. And also what you might notice is that you come back and you're not in as deep a side bend, as you were before. And see if you can make it go back to approximately the same. And we're going to take this maybe 3 more times, a little bit faster. You can just kind of roll onto one side, allowing the spine to stay almost as if I was inside some sort of container, and then back onto the back. And notice how much work do you actually need, and see if you can use as little work as possible, almost like your soft tissues, muscles, skin, organs are just kind of rolling around in this container that is the shape in space. And then the next time you come back to center, I'm gonna actually come back to center. I'm gonna replace myself on my mat because I tend to scoot down when I do this. You might have the same situation. And I'm gonna come to center to a Shavasana kind of position to notice how the two sides feel now. Both of them have worked. They have worked in very different ways. So the sensation that's occurring in the left side that was stretching and staying away from the ground might be very different from the sensation of the right side that was shortening and rolling onto the ground. So there's that contact, that touch, that probably creates a different feeling, different sensation. And then whenever you're ready, I'm gonna make our way to the second side. So I'm gonna cross my right ankle over the left. I'm gonna wiggle my head and my shoulders towards the right, maybe my hips towards the left, excuse me, maybe my hips towards the right, and take the arms up overhead. If it's okay with the shoulders, I'll grab the right wrist with the left hand. If not, you can keep your arms in a sort of cactus shape or something that works for you. And then I'm gonna check in with the head and the neck and make sure that we're following the side bending of the spine. So if my head is rolling to the side, that's not a bad thing. It's a perfectly fine thing to do, but maybe for today I'm gonna try to highlight the sense of sidedness. The right side now softly lengthening, making space for breath to happen, allowing the weaving of muscles and tissues to become a little bit looser, and my left side softly shortening, allowing maybe a little bit more of a condensing of tissue, maybe even a weightedness. And as I stay for a few breaths, we might notice if there's any particular tension anywhere, if there's any particular tightness, if this side feels same as the other or not. I know my left shoulder, I just caught it pulling down. Doesn't really need to do that as we stay. For some of us, the hips might want to roll, the lower back might want to fly off the ground. Whatever your pattern, whatever your tendency is, just notice it. And see if you can let yourself go as quiet as possible for just a couple more breaths before we take it into the small rolls to the side. Then whenever you're ready, you visualize the position of your spine in space. So more than the shape itself of the spine, because that's going to change. It's going to go from lateral flexion into forward flexion. The space that it occupies on the ground. And I'm going to keep that space the same and kind of roll around onto my left side, finding a fetal position. Maybe take the knees and the elbows in. Maybe the head tucks down towards the chest. And then reopen, and we're going to take the roll to the side and back about 3 more times. Feel free to go at your own rhythm. You might end up doing more or less. And one thing that I'm really interested in is that we identify the position of the spine in space, the location of the spine in space, and allow everything else to kind of softly organize around it. So it doesn't take a whole lot of effort to do this. And of course you could be a lot more detailed. You could make it a lot more specific, but for now, it's just all there is. Next time you come back to your Bandhanasana, to your side bend, come back to center. If you need to readjust on your mat so that you're actually centered, feel free to do that. And as you come into Shavasana, notice what things feel like now. Perhaps the sensations of the two sides have evened out a little bit now that they both have done the same work. Or perhaps there is some other difference. And take a second to notice how your right side and your left side meet at the center, at the midline. So sometimes I think finding clarity of the two sides can help us find clarity of the center. And then eventually we'll bend the knees, bring the soles of the feet on the floor, and take some knee drops. Just kind of dropping softly from side to side. Noticing the back of the pelvis, see if we can even use it to bring the knees back from the side, kind of a spreading like dough of the back of the pelvis. Sometimes deep side bends like that can create a little bit of adjustments in the back of the pelvis and the lower back. And then eventually we'll meet with the knees pointing up towards the seating, approximately parallel, approximately hip width apart. And the next thing is a little core exercise. So feel free to take breaks whenever you need to. Feel free to modify it as needed, especially if your neck feels a little aggravated. If it's your abdominals, you're probably fine, but it's always up to you. So I'm gonna interlace my fingers behind my head and start by lifting the head and the shoulders just a little bit up off the floor and just going to the base of my shoulder blades here. And then I'm gonna sweep my torso towards the right, trying to stay facing straight up towards the ceiling, and then back to center, and then over towards the left, and then back to center, right? I'm gonna try to go back and forth from right to center to left to center, keeping myself as flat towards the ceiling as possible, and trying to keep the elbows nice and wide. So you can also think about the elbows reaching away from each other. I'm working mostly in the upper spine in terms of mobility. If you have a really sticky mat, this might be a little bit harder, but that's okay. Just make the movement a little smaller. It doesn't have to be a huge side bend. And then at some point, and I can use my hands to support the neck too, at some point I'm gonna come back to center after I've done right and left. Back to center. If I can stay lifted with the head, wrap the elbows in towards the head this time and just let the chin tuck in towards the chest. Use the arms to pull the head up a little bit more, perhaps get a little stretch through the back of the neck, through the upper spine. See if I can relax the front of the body a little bit so the arms are doing most of the work here. And then slowly, slowly, I'm gonna release the spine and release the head down. Take a moment to release the arms also by the side, and if you need a little wiggle, if you need a knee drop, if you need anything else, feel free to take it. We have just one more of this core activation things, which is similar, but we'll add some spinal flexion, forward flexion. So I'm gonna interlace the fingers behind the head again, lift the head up off the floor, and this time go down towards the right. From the right, I'm gonna imagine that curve into a fetal position that I was doing earlier, except now I'm gonna move mostly my head and my tail. I'm gonna try to lift the tail up towards the ceiling a little teeny tiny bit. And then I'm gonna reopen tail and head and bend towards the left, and then come back to center. And then I'm gonna go towards the left, and then curl my head and my tail up towards center, and then go over towards the left, re-lengthening the spine, and center. I'm gonna go back and forth a few times. Feel free to take breaks. This is definitely a little bit more intense. See what things feel like. You don't have to lift like crazy. Check in with your lower back, check in with your neck. Those are usually the two things that can get a little aggravated doing these types of exercises. What I'm mostly interested in is the shape, but obviously we're throwing in some strengthening stuff as well, a little conditioning of the core. And then the next time you come back to center after you've done both sides, release back down. Whew. Take your arms by your sides, maybe even stretch your legs out long. Give yourself a moment to breathe. See if you can let your belly, your abdomen, your abdominal wall get nice and soft again, so you don't have to hold on to all of the tension all of the time. But you can give yourself a couple of breaths just to let them be, let them soften, let them open up. And then either roll onto one side or hug your knees to your chest and rock and roll forward and back a few times. We're gonna make our way up to sit. I like rocking and rolling if you have a soft enough surface to go on and it doesn't bother your spine. It can be a nice massage for the back. And then we're gonna come to sit, and we're not gonna be seated for very long, but if you need a prop, blanket, blocks, anything to sit on, feel free to grab it. I'd like just to take that same pattern with the head and the spine in this vertical position that might actually be quite a bit more clear, and I find it very satisfying. Hopefully I'm not alone. I'm gonna interlace the fingers behind the back of the head and imagine like a fountain sprouting from the top of the head up and over to one side and the other. So before I go down towards the side, I'm gonna try to keep the movement pretty high in the upper part of the spine. I'm gonna imagine going up towards the ceiling and then over towards the right. Right elbow down to the ground, left elbow up towards the ceiling, still facing forward. And then back up to center. And I'm gonna imagine reaching up towards the ceiling before I go down towards the left. Left elbow down, right elbow up. And still pretty high in my spine. And then back up to center one more time. I'm gonna go up towards the ceiling and over towards the right. And back to center to go up towards the ceiling and over towards the left. And back to center. And then I'm gonna add the spinal flexion and curl all the way around. It's a little bit, or it can be a little bit of a head swing if you feel comfortable with that. I'm gonna go up and over towards the right. Keep the curve in the spine and just curl in. And I'm thinking more of looking at my sternum than at my navel. So I'm not going really far down with the head for now. You'll see why later. And then over towards the left, back up to center, up and over and towards the left. Swing it and flex forward and over towards the right and back up to center. We'll take this one more time, twice if you want to go a little bit faster. Up and over towards the right, swing forward, softening the sternum, over to the left and back to center. Up and over towards the left, swing forward to the right and back up to center. And then once I'm here, I'm going to take a moment to reach the elbows further out to the side. See if I can soften the sternum. Notice if I'm kind of pushing the chest forward. Neutralize the spine as much as possible, as in finding a sort of plumb line from head to tail, and then try to just reach the arms up. And they might be able to stay right next to the ears because I was reaching the elbows out to the side. So just make a mental note of that if that's the case. See where your arms are. And then we'll release the arms, nice and easy. Shake things out. And move it to the hands and the knees to take some cats and some cows. Or some similar movements. Right? So we'll take a moment to move around. Feel free to move in any way that you feel is useful to you. I like to start with cats and cows just because the pelvis now has a lot of possibilities for movement. Can do a lot of tiltings, a lot of side things, a lot of wigglings. I'm not sitting or laying on top of it anymore, so I can move it around. You might also check in with the neck. You might also check in with your shoulders. You might check in with the hands. Right, we're not going to do a lot of, actually we're not going to do arm balances at all unless you want to throw them in at your own discretion. But do take a moment to see how your hands and how your wrists feel and how your weight bearing situation is as we'll go through some vinyasas, some chaturangas, some planks. And then you might want to take a child's pose. See how your knees and your hips are feeling. You might want to take a cobra. See how your spine is feeling in the back bend. You might want to tuck your toes under and press your seat back towards your heels to stretch your toes and the soles of your feet. You might want to take any other movement that you feel happy with, or that you feel is useful for you to come into your body, to come into your sensations. And then we'll meet back on hands and knees to take some circles from the head and the tail. And what I'm interested in is the 4 quarters of the circle, right? So I'm going to start in cat pose with the head and tail towards the ground, and then I'm going to take them towards the right, and I'm going to try to find that flat side position right? The transition, there's all kinds of like in-between points. And then I'm gonna find myself flat. And then go into cow pose with my head and tail towards the ceiling. Same deal. As I take it down towards the left, I'm gonna try to find that side place. And notice if my head or my tail want to go at a different time. And then you don't have to stop the circle necessarily. You can make it a little bit more fluid. So circle around. Just notice if you can pass through that clear side. It's never just side, but, and then we'll change direction. I also am thinking about moving from the head and the tail, but you might have a different strategy. You might be moving from your rib cage a little bit more, kind of drawing circles, or something else, which is totally fine. Eventually I'm gonna make my way back to center to find a neutral spine, which is also an interesting place to be, where I'm not doing any of those actions. I'm not going to the side, I'm not going forward, I'm not going backwards. I'm just kind of letting the spine be where it needs to be. And then I'm gonna thread the needle, lifting the right arm up towards the ceiling. We'll thread the right arm under, placing the shoulder on the floor. Make sure your head and neck are comfortable, right? And then also make sure sometimes when we thread the arm, we kind of follow with the head, so there is some flexion in the spine. And see if you can keep yourself nice and centered, so the spine is, if possible, just twisting. I don't think it's ever possible to just do one movement, but as clear as possible, right? If you want to wrap your left arm around your back, if you want to reach it overhead. I'm kind of going for a shoulder stretch more than a big twist here, so I'm letting my chest drop towards my arm, but you can certainly make it more active and find more of a twist in the spine. Your choice. We'll take one more full breath in and full breath out here to just be in this simple shape, and then release. Taking the left hand back in front of the face if it's moved around, unthread the right arm. If it's okay, reach it all the way back up towards the ceiling, and then take the right hand back down to go the other way. Lifting left arm up towards the ceiling. And I'm gonna thread the left arm under, placing the shoulder on the floor. Find a comfortable enough setup so my neck is not getting aggravated. Choose if you wanna keep it more active and more of a twist, or if you wanna go more for like a shoulder stretch and kind of drop your chest down towards the floor a little bit more. If you want, wrap your right arm around your back, or reach it towards the front of your mat, or keep it where it is. Find a place for it so that your shoulders are happy. And notice if you followed your hands, your left hand with your head, if you kind of flexed over towards the left arm, yes. See if you can find center. So between your head and your tail, there is a nice long line that just happens to be twisting around itself. And it's not flexing in any direction. And we'll just take one more full breath in, full breath out to stay. Whenever you're ready, you take your right hand back in front of your face, press down to unthread your left arm, reaching it up towards the ceiling, and then take your hands back down to the floor. And from here, we're gonna make our way into a downward facing dog. So you're gonna tuck your toes under, and make your way to your dog. Take a moment to pedal out the feet. Take any movement to wiggle or adjustment that you like to take, especially in this first downward facing dog, to let yourself get as comfortable as possible, or start to notice what's going on in your lower body. We put a lot of attention to the upper body, maybe not so much to the feet, the ankles, the calves quite yet. Whenever you're ready, from here, we're gonna take an inhale to come forward into a nice long plank position and lower down all the way to the mat. Feel free to put your knees down first, or you can go straight in one line. Release the forehead down on the floor for a moment, reach the toes away, and then see if you can remember that fountain going up through the top of your head. You go forward before you go up and back into your cobra. And you can make it as big or small as you want, as long as there is an up and over sensation from the top of your head. And then from here, we'll make our way back up to downward facing dog. Tucking the toes under, come through a child's pose if you want, or any transition that's helpful. From downward facing dog, I'm gonna lift the right leg up towards the ceiling. Take a moment to open the hips, take a bend in the knee, and maybe roll your ankle around, or maybe roll your entire hip around. And take a couple of breaths. I like to stay here, mostly actually to drop the left heel on the floor and get a little calf stretch on that side if your calves are tight. And then on your next exhale, you take the knee towards the nose and step the foot forward between the hands, taking the back knee down on the ground. Then come to Anjaneyasana. Back toes can be tucked or untucked, your choice. As I lift the torso up, it's your choice how far down in the lunge you want to go. We're going to move the torso around. Sometimes staying back is a little bit more stable. Interlace the fingers behind the head. And from my lunge, take a side bend over towards the left. Right elbow goes up towards the ceiling. Left elbow goes down, and I'm still facing fully forward. Take a breath, and then we'll come back through center. And from center, go up and over and towards the right. Drop the right elbow down, reach your left elbow up. From the left, we're going to come back up to center to go one more time down towards the left. Up and over to center and towards the right. And then this time from the right, I'm going to let my spine flex, taking head and tail towards each other as I take the forehead towards my right knee. Release the hands down and step back into downward facing dog. From downward facing dog, take an inhale to roll forward into a plank position. Slowly lower all the way down to the mat. This time, if you want, you can interlace your fingers behind your head. Just know it's going to be a little harder for the neck. So be gentle with that. And I'm going to do the same thing. Take a cobra, but with the elbows lifted, reaching the head forward. Sometimes you can actually tug it a little with your hands, if that's helpful. And keep opening the elbows really, really, really wide, which will activate your back muscles. Take a breath in. As you breathe out, release your head down, release your hands back by your ribs, make your way to downward facing dog. From downward facing dog, we'll take a breath in to lift the left leg up. Open the hips, take a bend in the knee, and again, you have a couple of breaths here to roll out your ankle, or roll out your entire hip if you want, or just stay where you are, maybe reaching the right heel down towards the ground to get a little bit more into your calf and ankle. And on your next exhale, you take your knee towards the nose. Step the foot forward gently between your hands. Take your back knee down, toes tucked or untucked. Find your Anjaneyasana. Now you know what's happening, so feel free to organize your pelvis however it's more stable. Interlace the fingers behind the head and take it up and over and towards the right. Make sure that your ribs are not pushing way forward. That's usually because you're taking a little back bend. And then come back to center, wait, and go up and over and towards the left. I like to drop the bottom elbow, in this case is the left, to drop it pretty heavy to soften the shoulder. And then back up to center, we'll take it one more time, up and over towards the right. And back to center and up and over towards the left. And then this time we're going to go into flexion, remembering the tail too. So the entire spine flexes as I take my forehead towards my left knee. And then take the hands down to the floor and step back into downward facing dog. From downward facing dog, I'll breathe into plank pose. One more time, lower all the way down to the mat. Hands can be behind your head, or you can take them to a cactus shape. I'm going to lift my head up, and this time I'm going to add some side bending. I'm going to take my arms in cactus, so you see this variation too. I'm going to just side bend towards the right, and then back to center, and towards the left. Similar movement to what we've been working on, except this time I'm adding spinal extension to the gaze. So maybe the side bend is not as big, and that's okay. Don't have to do a million of them unless you really like them. Whenever you've had enough, you come back to center. Take your hands next to your ribs. Relax your forehead down for a moment. Relax your legs. Tuck your toes. Press back maybe through a child's pose for a moment. We'll meet back up in downward facing dog. similar but different, we're gonna add a little whole movement pattern. I'm gonna take an inhale to lift the right leg up. Exhale to open the hips, take a bend in the knee, drop the left heel. Inhale here, and as you exhale, take your knee towards the nose, step the foot between your hands, and we're back up in our Anjaneyasana. Interlace the fingers behind the head, take an inhale to go up and over towards the left. Exhale there, come back to center as you breathe in, and then go up and over towards the right. This time, we're gonna swing the head all the way towards the back of the mat. We're gonna find our flexion first, and then as I keep going, I'm gonna let the left foot swing behind me, and I'll go into a gate pose sort of variation with the right leg extended, left or head towards the left. I'm gonna take the left hand down, reach the right arm up, and here I am in sort of a gate pose. If you wanna even reach the right arm overhead, get a little bit more of a side stretch, feel free to do that. Take a deep breath in. And then we'll keep the hands on the floor to kind of help us walk back to our lunge, finding flexion in the spine, allowing the hands to walk around, right knee bends, left foot swings towards the back of the mat. Tuck the toes under and step back. Downward facing dog. Take an inhale to come forward into a plank pose. Exhale to lower, knees just chin, chaturanga, half chaturanga. Inhale for a cobra or an upward facing dog. Exhale to come back up into downward facing dog. From here, we'll take a breath in, lift the left leg up. On an exhale, open the hips, take a bend in the knee, maybe drop the right heel a little bit more into the ground. On your next exhale, take the knee towards the nose. Step the foot between the hands and take the back knee down. Find your Anjaneyasana, interlace the fingers behind the head, take a breath in to go up and over and towards the right. Maybe stay as you exhale. Inhale to come back to center and then go up and over and towards the left. And back to, actually don't go back to center, curl forward. And then let the head keep going. Turn your left toes in, turn your right foot towards the back of the mat. Come into your gate pose variation, release your right hand down whenever you land it, left arm up. So my legs are about parallel, right foot is and shin are going towards the side of the mat, left foot is parallel, left leg is straight. If you want, lengthen left arm next to the ear to get more into the sensation of stretch through the left side. And then to come back, we're gonna walk the same way. Spine is gonna do the same thing, but we're gonna use the hands on the floor to try that one too. So I'm gonna flex the spine, head towards tail, bend the left knee as I start going, so I have a little traction, and let the right foot swing around towards the back of the mat as I make my way back up to my lunge, and then into downward facing dog. And this time from downward facing dog, we'll take a little walk, or a hop. Bring the feet forward towards the hands, take a moment to hang there. Especially if you're doing your little back bends with the head behind, with the hands behind the head, give yourself a moment to maybe shake off your head and neck and see how they're doing. Make sure that they're not aggravated by all of that stuff. And then we'll bend the knees and roll the spine up, one vertebra at a time, all the way up to stand. As you come to stand, give yourself a second. If you want, you can even close your eyes to just see what things are feeling like, what things are doing, what's going on all around, what's going on in the right side, what's going on in the left side. And if you can find your midline. And then we'll take 3 sun salutations. I'll talk you through Surya Namaskar A's. If you want to take other variations, you're on your own, feel free to do that. If you want to join me, take a breath in with the arms up. And then exhale to swan dive forward and take the fingers down to the floor. Inhale to look forward for a half lift. Exhale to hop or step back. And take your vinyasa of choice. Could be knees just chin, could be chaturanga, could be somewhere in between, upward facing dog or cobra. As you inhale, we'll meet back in downward facing dog for about 3 or 2 breaths, depending how fast or slow you're breathing. On your next exhale, look between your hands, bend the knees, and take a walk or take a hop. Feet towards the hands, relax the head down for a second, and then inhale for your half lift. Exhale to refold. And inhale to reverse your swan dive. Come all the way up. Exhale, arms down by your sides, back to center. Inhale, lift the arms up. Exhale, swan dive forward, take your fingers down to the floor. Inhale, look forward for your half lift. And exhale to hop or walk your feet towards the back of the mat. Take your vinyasa of choice, full or half chaturanga, or it could be use just chin, upward facing dog or cobra. Back to downward facing dog for a couple of breaths or 3. Maybe you let your downward facing dog be a check-in place. Once you landed, maybe you check in on other stuff. How's your midline? How's your mind? How's your heart? How's your energy level? On your next exhale, look between your hands. Step, hop, or walk your feet towards your hands to a forward fold. Inhale for your half lift. Exhale to refold. And inhale to reverse your swan dive. Come all the way up. And arms down by your sides for mountain pose. Last one if you're moving with me. Take a breath in, lift the arms. Exhale, swan dive forward. Take your fingers down to the floor. Inhale, look forward for your half lift. Exhale to hop or walk. Take your vinyasa of choice. Maybe downward facing dog for about 2 or 3 breaths if you're moving with me. Could also be a child's pose. It could be a dolphin. It could be that you're playing with handstands, hops. And then from here, bend the knees in between your hands, take a walk or hop. Feet towards the hands, inhale for your half lift. Exhale to fold. Inhale to reverse your swan dive, come all the way up. And then take your arms down by your sides. You're back in your mountain pose. Give yourself a moment to land. See what things feel like now after moving for a bit. Notice if anything else came up. Maybe some pattern kind of took over again. Habitual movement, invite habitual patterns. And then we'll take a chair pose. You can work with your feet together or hip width apart, your choice. We'll take our chair pose, sitting back towards the heels, lifting the arms up. And then once you're nice and stable, interlace the fingers behind your head. Take a deep breath in, go up and over and side bend towards the right. Curl yourself forward, forehead towards the knees. And then over towards the left. And then back up to center. And then we'll do the other side, up and over towards the left. Curl yourself forward. And towards the right. And back to center, and then same as we did when we were seated, open your elbows nice and wide to the side. See if you can contain your chest and your tail from flying into a back bend. And see if you can reach your arms straight up from that place, and maybe they're a little bit further back or closer to your shoulders, to your ears. Take a deep breath in. As you breathe out, fold forward. Take a couple of breaths in a forward bend. If you would like to, you can interlace your fingers behind your back, roll the shoulder blades together, and add this shoulder stretch to your forward bend. On your next exhale, release your arms down. Take an inhale for a half lift. Exhale to hop or walk. Take a vinyasa or not. We'll meet in downward facing dog. From downward facing dog, when you land it, take a breath in, lift your right leg up. If you want, open the hips, take a bend in the knee. On your next exhale, take your knee towards the nose. Step the foot between your hands. Pause for a second. We'll come to warrior two. But I'd like you to drop your head down. Take your left heel down and then let yourself roll to the side, same as you did when you were on the ground. So you're going from a forward fold into a side bend. And then let yourself come up head last. It's a little weird successional way of coming up into warrior two, which might not be your habitual one. And then you're there in your warrior two. Maybe your arms can go a tiny bit lower than the shoulders so that you have a little more weight, a little bit more space between the shoulders and the ears. Give yourself a couple of breaths to just be in Warrior Two, organizing your feet however you want, finding your midline. And then turn your head to face right in front of you, same direction as your chest. Interlace your fingers behind your head. Take a breath in to go up and over into a reverse warrior variation with the right elbow up, left elbow down. And I'm not going into a back bend, which sometimes we do. And then up and over to center, and then up and over to the right to go into a variation of side angle. I'm gonna actually kind of land my right elbow on the inside of the right knee and see if I can find a little bit of opposition between the two elbows to stay flat towards the side. And then I'm gonna come back up to center, straighten the right leg as I go up and over into my reverse triangle. Release the arms, right arm up, left arm down, and then take it up and over to triangle pose, which is technically not a side bend. So you could also play with it. You can find your side bend one way or the other, and then see if you can let your spine settle for some neutral enough position. Depending on your hamstrings, your hips, the distance between your feet, a number of other things, the spine might not be exactly neutral. There might be a little side bend, but neutral enough. And if you want to turn your head up towards your left fingers or not. And we have a couple more breaths in triangle pose, familiar shape. Maybe finding the reaching of all of the limbs, including the spine, letting the spine be another limb, like your arms or your legs. And then from here, I'm gonna softly bend the right knee to curl into my forward folded lunge, forehead to knee. And then step back to downward facing dog or to a vinyasa, your choice. And we'll go to the second side. Whenever you're ready, take a breath in. Lift the left leg up. If you want to open the hips, take a bend in the knee for a breath. On your next exhale, take your knee towards the nose, tuck the foot between your hands. You're gonna take the back heel down and then tuck the forehead towards the knee a little bit and see if I can roll over to the side and then successionally come up. So my head will be the last thing that comes up, which might be a little bit harder to balance in. For my Warrior Two. Warrior Two, organize the feet, make sure that they're where you want them to be. Arms a tiny bit lower than the shoulders. Maybe turn the head towards the left fingers, maybe not. And then I'm going to interlace the fingers behind the head as I turn my face towards the side. Take a reverse warrior, dropping the right elbow down towards the right leg, left elbow up towards the ceiling. Come up and over to the center and go up and over towards the left elbow to the inside of the left knee. This sort of variation on side angle. Finding the opposition of the elbows. On the next inhale, I come back up to center. Up and over into reverse triangle, straightening the front knee. Release the arms, left arm up, right arm down. And then up and over through center into my triangle pose. And if you need to shorten your stance, look for you to wiggle your back foot forward. Left hand can land on your foot, ankle, shin, floor, block, whatever you've got around. Maybe I turn my head up towards the right fingers, maybe not. And you can play with your spine for a moment, or just with the feeling, with the sensation. Does it feel like it's long? Does it feel like it's side bending? There's definitely a little twist in triangle pose, not major, but some. But what kind of shape is it making in space? What kind of space is it occupying from head to tail? And then I'm going to softly bend the left knee, curl towards my lunge, towards the left leg, letting my spine find some flexion. Step back to downward facing dog. Take a vinyasa if you want. I have two more little variations on this, and we're gonna change our facing from front to back of the mat, just so you're aware of that. So you might lose sight of the video for a second. We'll take an inhale to lift the right leg up. Exhale to step the foot forward between your hands, same as we just did. We'll come up into our warrior two, maybe through a side bend. From here, interlace the fingers behind the head. Take an inhale for a reverse. Left elbow down, right elbow up. Up and over to center and towards the right. And this time, same as we did to get into gate pose earlier. I'm gonna soften the left knee, let the spine flex, turn the right toes in, and then keep going towards the left toes as I turn the left toes out, left elbow to left knee, lengthen the right leg. And then I'm gonna release the arms. You could have your elbow on your thigh, or you could have your left hand on the floor, right arm up. Excuse me. If you'd like to, turn your head up towards your hand. If you'd like to, reach your right arm overhead. Now, side angle is also technically or classically not a big side bend. So if you find yourself in a big side bend with the head towards the knee, can you find a more neutral spine? And maybe the fact that you've done so many side bends can help you find a non-side bend shape. Take a deep breath in. And then as you breathe out, we'll find our lunge towards the left foot to step back into downward facing dog or into a vinyasa, your choice. Whenever you're ready, left leg goes up. Exhale, step the foot forward between the hands. We'll come up into our warrior two towards the left, perhaps through that funny side bend. Interlace the fingers behind the head. We'll flow through a little faster. And then up and over towards the right. Through center and up and over towards the left. And then from here, let the spine curl forward, parallel your feet as you soften your right knee for the transition. And then keep going towards your side angle to the right. And you can release your arms, forearm on the thigh, hand to the floor if you want. Left arm reaches next to the ear if you want, gaze goes up. And just check in with your spine. It's not a terrible thing if it's doing a side bend, right? It might actually feel really nice. For some of us, classically the shape is not a side bend. It's a little bit more of a hip thing than a spine thing. So if you want to go for that, you can find your neutral-ish spine. Take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And then we'll find our lunge towards the right leg. Step back to downward facing dog or to a vinyasa, your choice. We'll meet back up in downward facing dog. Take a moment in child's pose or some other resting position if you'd like to take something different. We'll have just one last little bit of standing stuff that's a little bit of a play on all of these things that we just did. So some of you might want to even take it a little bit more dynamically and kind of swing your head around a little bit more. Our timing might then end up being a little different. That's totally fine with me. I'm going to talk you through step by step, so it'll probably be quite slow, but sometimes moving faster is actually a little bit easier and less effortful. So feel free to play with everything that you've collected so far. We're going to meet in downward facing dog. And from there, take a breath in to lift the right leg up. Exhale to step the foot between your hands and come up into your warrior two. From warrior two, maybe interlace the fingers behind the head, maybe not, into your reverse warrior. Up and over and into your side angle. Maybe interlace the fingers, maybe not. We're gonna come all the way over towards the left into Ardha Chandrasana, half moon pose. Following the head and then finding the lift of the left leg. Or you could stay in triangle or side angle, any of those variations. If you're in Ardha Chandrasana and you feel like it, you can try to lift your left hand, maybe take it to your heart center, maybe just lift it a couple of inches off the floor. Ardha Chandrasana is also not a side bend. So you can find a little bit more of that extension that we thought about in triangle pose, like your spine is another limb. It's as long and reaching as your legs and your arms. And then from here, we're gonna Soften the left knee, flex the spine towards the left knee and tuck your right knee towards the left side of the mat. We'll come into a seated spinal twist, right? So you come to sit and you're already kind of twisting towards the left. If you'd like to take a different twist variation, feel free to take a different twist variation. We'll take a few breaths here, see if your spine can be neutral-ish. Now their tendency is often to curl over. Do you feel like we're going a little bit deeper or further into the twist? See if you have that desire. And if you can contain it, maybe. And on the next exhale, I'm gonna release the torso. If you wanna take a counter twist, I do like to dip the counter twist into a flexion. And then we'll come back to center. To come back up, we're gonna use a spinal flexion. I'm gonna kind of parallel my left foot so the toes are pointing straight forward. We'll come into standing split. But I'm gonna think about my head going up and over past the left toes, so I shift my weight, maybe with a little bit more ease. And then I lift the leg up. You can keep it super parallel if you wanna be precise, or if you wanna get a little more satisfaction and you're like me, and you like immediate satisfaction, you can let your leg turn out a little bit and reach it up towards the ceiling. And then slowly from here, we'll make our way to a lunge. We're facing the back of the mat. To downward facing dog, to a vinyasa if you want, or not. Last little bit, and then we'll take it to the ground. From here, take an inhale, lift your left leg up. Exhale, step the foot forward. Between your hands, take your back heel down and come up into your warrior two. Hands behind the head or not, into your reverse warrior. Up and over into your side angle towards the left leg, hands on the floor, hands interlaced, whatever you want with your hands. We're gonna come all the way around to Ardha Chandrasana, following your head and reaching over towards the right. And then once you're in your Ardha Chandrasana, lengthen your spine like you're lengthening your arms and your legs. And if you wanna lift your right hand off the floor, you're welcome to do that. I would suggest finding something to look at. Maybe not straight up towards the ceiling, it's usually easier to look at the ground. You can figure it out. Maybe you just lifted an inch or two. And then whenever you've had enough, we're gonna soften the right knee for the transition. Take your forehead towards the right knee. Tuck your left knee towards the right edge of your mat, pinky to a side of your right foot. Come to sit in your seated spinal twist. Whatever you want to do with your arms, whatever you want to do with your legs, if you need a different variation of the twist, feel free to find what works. Then on an exhale, we release the twist. If you like to take a counter twist into a forward fold, you can do that. And then we'll try to kind of launch into our standing split, thinking up and over past the right foot. So my pelvis should get a little lighter as I come up into my standing split. Again, feel free to work parallel if you want to work a little bit more of that detail, or if you just want to stretch yourself out. You can let your left leg turn out a little bit and lift it a little higher. And then slowly, we'll step back. You can take one more vinyasa if you feel called to it or not. We're gonna meet on the ground. Could be a child's pose, or you could be all the way flat on the ground, or you could be taking a dolphin. You could take a moment to do whatever you need to do. If you are coming into your child's pose, you can use this time also to just find the ground. To notice if your body's kind of all activated at this point, which it might be. You're playing with moving around. Some of you maybe were swinging the head around a little bit faster. Sometimes I like to swing back and forth a few times before I land the balance, and then the balance never works. So see if you can just let yourself find the ground again from wherever you are. And from here, I'd like to take camel and in a couple of different variations, and potentially some of you might want to follow me into Kapotasana. To start, we're gonna take our little side swings into the back, right? So I'm gonna start standing on my knees. If you need a blanket under your knees, go grab it. And then maybe I'll tuck the toes, which sometimes is a little bit easier. If you want to interlace the fingers, but then you kind of have to also release your arms. So maybe I'll just lift the arms up towards the ceiling. Take a side bend towards the left, let's say. Find your left foot with your left hand and then swing yourself back. And maybe your right hand finds your right heel, and then a side bend over towards the right to come back up to center, right? And then I'm gonna try to go up and over and towards the right, find the back, and then go over towards the left, and then back to center. If you wanna try a second round, we can do with the toes untucked perhaps. Starting with the arms up, I'm gonna go up and over towards the left, and then lean back as I find my heels, letting the pelvis stay as much as possible over the knees, up and over towards the right, and to center, and then up and over towards the right, over to the back, over to the left, and back to center. And then it might take a moment to pause. And now you have, of course, all of the options. You can take another camel of your choice. You can try this again. You can take a different back bend. If you want, we'll take camel going from forward to back, from spinal flexion to spinal extension, and then into Kapotasana. So what happens, I like to start from kneeling actually, and just kind of find a big spinal flexion here, head towards tail. And then from here, push with the feet and come all the way up, unravel the spine, and go find the heels. Toes can be tucked or untucked. If you want to work a little bit harder, come back. And curl yourself in. Your hands could also stay down, which might be a little easier on the shoulders. You can keep your hands close to your heels, let yourself go up and over, most of the spinal job, and then up and over to come forward. If you want to take it into Kapotasana, we'll start the same way, but the hands, I like them to slide along the shins and towards the knee as the head goes towards the floor. You might or not get there, it doesn't really matter. Be mindful, right? So from here, I'm gonna unravel myself and go all the way down. And then come back up and fold. And I'm gonna take it one more time for fun, whatever it is that you're doing. Whee! And then we'll meet. Oof, in a comfortable seat. Take your time to reorganize. We're gonna come to Janu Sirsasana. I'm gonna bend the left knee and have my right leg straight. And I'm actually angling myself towards diagonal a little bit, so my hips are a little open to the side, because we'll take Parivrtta Janu Sirsasana first, which is a side bend. And I'm gonna go again to interlace the fingers behind the head, turn the torso towards the left knee, and then go up and over towards the left, which is a little weird, right elbow up towards the ceiling. And then same as I was doing for my side angles, maybe I even bend the right knee a little bit, go up and over towards the right, find the knee with the elbow, and then maybe lengthen the elbow, or excuse me, the knee, and then maybe release the arms. Left arm can go up towards the ceiling, or you could reach overhead, or if you want, you can even wrap it around your back, whatever works with your body today. One of the big things that happens in this variation of Janu Sirsasana is that we start to fold forward, which is not dangerous or terrible in any way, but if we want to be clear about the side bend, hopefully it's a little bit more clear now. Feel free to use your hands to support yourself. I'm just wrapping things up, coming close to the end. From here, if you want, you can think about that same rolling over into flexion. Just let yourself fold over it. I like to square the hips off a bit more as I come into my forward fold. I also like the flexion in the forward fold. Some people hate it. If you want to take a more spine extended, more of a flat back, you can do that. And slowly, slowly make your way back up from this side. Lengthen your left leg out. I'm going to give it a moment to rest. You give it a little shake or a little tap to the knee to need some circulation to go back to it. And then take the right foot in. Again, I'm going to angle myself to the side. I find it makes it a little bit easier to find the side bend. If you want to join me, interlace the fingers behind the head. Turn around towards the right knee. Go up and over towards the right. Left elbow up, right elbow down. Just for a second, and then find the up and over to go towards the left. Maybe even bend the left knee to come and catch the knee with the elbow, and then maybe the leg straightens, maybe the arms lengthen. And then whatever you want to do with your right arm. You could reach overhead, which will create more of a stretch. You could wrap around your back. Just point straight up towards the ceiling. Sometimes it makes it a little bit easier to find the plumb line. It's a little easier on the shoulder. And then just notice if you're starting to fall forward. And see if you cannot. Not because of safety or purity, but just because that's what we're doing today. It's one way of doing it. One thing is to put the focus on. One of the many, many, many options. And then eventually you'll find your forward fold. Whatever variation you need to do. If you like to square off your hips a little bit more, go for it. If you want a flat back instead of a flexed spine, go for it. Then slowly, slowly make our way back up to lengthen the right leg. Give it a little shake. Take your time if you're moving in a different rhythm or timing. We're going to come down to the back to take supine spinal twist. You might also like to throw an inversion in here. You should be well prepped for shoulder stand, also for a headstand. But in particular shoulder stand because of the spinal flexion. So if you feel like it, feel free to go ahead and do it. I'm gonna take some supine twist. Dropping the knees over towards the left side first. Whenever you're ready, come over to the other side. Knees towards the right. We'll make our way to center and to find Shavasana or any sort of comfortable resting position you would rather take. You might have your knees bent, you might have your knees straight. Place your hands wherever you want. Sometimes it's nice to have them somewhere on the body. As you let your body soften and settle, you can let your mind and your attention also soften. And if it feels like you're getting distracted, so be it. See if you can let yourself not pay attention to anything in particular. Which means also not following the thoughts that might be coming up. And if you're still tracking your breath or tracking sensations in the body, you can also stop that or soften that. And then whenever you're ready, if you want to ignore me, feel free to ignore me or turn your video off. If you would like to come back together, take a moment to wiggle yourself out, take a stretch, take a roll. Maybe open your eyes and kind of relocate yourself in your own space. Find your way up to a comfortable seat. Let the seat also be simple, and see if you can figure out a way to settle into your midline, maybe with an understanding of the two sides, your right and left side, and then of the place where they meet. And let yourself settle in the center. If you want, take the palms of your hands to your heart center and take a gentle bow in gratitude to all the teachers and all the students who've gone before, and the greatest teacher of all, which is that within ourselves. Thank you. I hope this was fun, and I hope to see you all soon.